everybody, and welcome to another of my Skyrim wandering videos. We are here in 2011's Skyrim, on the outskirts of Bleak Falls Barrow, one of the most iconic locations in all of Skyrim, as a major early game dungeon, which was heavily featured in promotional art material and so on. The graphics of Skyrim have, of course, not aged particularly well. They are far more polygonal than I think exists in our memories, but anyway, I think I've worn this bit out, and so I will stop being stupid. This is, of course, Minecraft, and I wanted to do some more Minecraft ASMR after my city exploring one, and I was going to load up a survival world and just yammer on while we played a bit of that. But then I had a different idea, as I remembered when they were releasing theme packs back in the day, and you know, there was a Halo theme pack and a Mass Effect theme pack and, you know, various mythology theme packs and so on. They would also release these little pre-made worlds, which showed off the theme a bit, and also showed off a bit of the world that the theme was referencing. So this is the Skyrim theme pack, of course. Just wondering if there might be like a hidden door back here or something, but doesn't seem like it. But yeah, and I remember when these theme packs were coming out, I thought these worlds were pretty cool, and I didn't actually buy, I think, any of the packs, but what was kind of fun is you could load up the worlds for free. So I thought it would be fun to wander around this Skyrim world, and I kind of like this idea, so if you are all interested in this, I was thinking in the future we could check out some more of these little pre-made Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, some various other things, so I think it would be kind of cool. But we have a pretty major location to explore in this pack. But before we get there, I believe we can go visit another very iconic Skyrim location, which is the town of Riverwood. The town of Riverwood. Riverwood, of course, is the first location in Skyrim that most players will tend to visit after they escape Helgen. You come out of Helgen and the path kind of guides you down to the Standing Stones and Riverwood. So I think most people end up there. It's a pretty iconic site. You have the little love triangle quest between Sven and Feindal, right? The Nord and the Elf who are both vying for a local girl's affections. You can stop at the local sawmill, drop some wood for a bit of spending gold. You can visit the local forge, the local general store. It's a nice little starting area to launch you into your adventures across frigid Skyrim. So across this bridge we have the sawmill that I spoke of. This is where the timber would be cut, split on the large rotary saws. This villager is stuck in the water, unfortunately for them. I like the little detail here of the pile of logs which they have represented with 4 simple rows of planks. And then over here we have a short dock, a fishing point, place to cast in for some freshwater fish that navigate the waterways of Skyrim. seen a variety of what those paintings look like. Hanging weaponry, elk antlers, and so on. I like the beds in this theme are essentially just normal beds, but with a little goat skin draped across the bottom. So, Riverwood probably doesn't have anything particularly crazy, but we can just poke our head into these buildings here, the general store. Of course, a saber cat head mounted on the wall there. Very nice. And over here we have a small farming area, along with the house in the back here. I can't recall, is this Faendal's house? This looks like maybe actually a shop. I can't remember what building is back here in the game. Ooh. The sheep look a little creepy to me, actually. Of course, they are oh my god, their eyes are not. I don't like that face, man. That's freaky. Of course, they are representing the goats of Skyrim. But just looked a little off. The sheep was like naked. The face was creeping me out. But goats have creepy eyes anyway, so I guess that's not inappropriate. So here we have some villagers, a fire pit, here in the inn, in the inn, in the inn, in the inn, Of course, Riverwood being the kind of launching point for your Skyrim adventure. It's a bit of a microcosm of the things you can do in Skyrim, right? It has one or two minor quests, it has shops and things. It has the thread to take you up to Bleak Falls Barrow with the golden craw, golden craw. We have a signpost here with a ton of different directions on it. I wonder if that's sugar cane. I feel like it would be sugar cane, but maybe a cactus. But sugar cane is kind of see-through like that. So this path leads us down to a very famous Skyrim location. We can see the silhouette of it just over this ridge here. So there is Whiterun. The draw distance is not doing it any favors, but there is Whiterun. And it seems quite sizable. Quite sizable. So, we of course will go investigate Whiterun, but before we do that, let's go to the site of your first dragon fight in Skyrim, the Lone Watchtower. We can admire the exterior wall of Whiterun here. It's not an exact recreation of the area. For example, there is no stable. Normally there is a stable outside Whiterun where you can buy a horse. The gate there, but we can see the watchtower there. So let's go investigate. Let's go investigate. 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 certain block type for a very particular thematic purpose to imitate something in the source material. So, you might occasionally find that, I don't know, stone bricks were used to represent, like, a warp core in Mass Effect or something. I know that doesn't exist, but you get my point. And then all of your stone brick buildings would suddenly look crazy because they were all made of these warp cores. But here we have entered the city of Whiterun, the White River passing under our feet. And over here you have a forge in the game. And I remember this forge very, very well because so my brother, my older brother, when Skyrim came out, we would take turns playing it because we were young enough at that point where, we had to have rules instituted by our parents of turns, right? You get this amount of time, and then your brother has to have that amount of time, right? So, and we weren't young children at that point, but we were in perhaps an even less mature phase, which is young teenage years. So, I remember we flipped a coin or something to decide who would get the first turn when Skyrim came out. We both played a lot of Oblivion, we both loved Oblivion, so we were incredibly excited for the new Elder Scrolls game. And now my story is veering off a little bit from what triggered the memory, but I will finish this and then wrap around to why I know the Forge so well. So, my brother, I love this, the mounted slaughterfish painting. Very nice. So my brother got the first turn. We opened up our little Skyrim case. We drove home from, GameStop, popped the disc into our Xbox 360. My brother gets the first turn to play for, I forget, probably 45 minutes to an hour or something like that. And he just spends his entire turn in the character creation menu. And I think I'd have to ask him about this. I think he might have even played for like 5 minutes into Helgen and then restarted so that he could remake his character. And it drove me crazy because I was like, I want to see the game. I'm so excited for Skyrim, And I have to sit here for an hour and watch him fiddle with the way that his Khajiit looks. devices. Sometimes they use torches, and sometimes they use what I imagine is glowstone. So, anyways, that first turn was a torment to me. But then I got to play, and of course, I whipped up an Argonian in 5 minutes, and then took off, and the adventure of a lifetime began. But anyway, that's the story of my first session of Skyrim, and how my first time ever being exposed to the game. I had to sit for an hour and watch somebody in the character creation screen. But the reason that I thought of that story because of the forge at the entrance of Whiterun that I said I was very familiar with. Also these little marketplace stalls look very nice. I assume that's wool forming the awning up above, but looks quite nice. I just had an insane stomach grumble. That was crazy. I'm gonna have to mute that. It sounded like a feral cat was in my stomach. It was like a whine. Like this. Sorry, I've just never heard that kind of a noise come from a stomach grumble before. Like a pair of alley cats going at it. Anyway. Sorry, I'm so stupid. I make myself laugh. I was gonna say something. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Just to explain, I thought of something very vulgar in my head, and I decided not to say it, but I was making myself laugh just from thinking it. Anyway, somebody shut this guy up. Bro is yapping. What is blood waffling about? Okay, so back to the forge at Whiterun and why I know that forge so well. So, as you can probably infer just from that one story, my brother and I tend to play these kinds of video games very, very differently. Also, check out this orc. We have an orc villager. Very nice. My brother and I play these kind of open world RPG. Lots of freedom of choice in how you do things. We play them very, very differently. So, this whole turn system on the Xbox was, of course, not just relevant for the day that Skyrim came out. This is a game that you can put hundreds of hours into. And we were both, unemployed kids who just wanted to play it every day after school. So, whenever we finished up our extracurriculars, he was on the wrestling team, and I was doing theater. We'd get back home, and we would have to take turns playing So he would play for an hour, I would watch him, and then I would play for an hour and he would watch me. So when it was my turn, I would, be adventuring in Bleak Falls Barrow. I'd be getting dragon shouts, I'd be joining the companions, or, doing the Thieves Guild, doing the main quest, clearing, Draugr and stuff, all sorts of fun fantasy adventures. And then I would give my brother the controller, and for an hour I would watch him in Whiterun's forge, just forging like iron gauntlets, and then selling them to the merchant, and then buying more raw materials to make more iron gauntlets. Also, speaking of iron, we have an iron golem here. That's interesting. They made it a frost troll. Which, of course, would not just be chilling in a town like this, but I like the design. I like the choice to make it a frost troll. That's fun. Because my brother wanted to level up his blacksmithing to 100, I guess, so that he could, make himself the best armor and weapons before going and doing anything. And so I would just sit there and watch him repeat the same loop over and over and over again. Go to the merchant, sell the gauntlets, buy the leather and the leather straps and the iron ingots, go forge more iron gauntlets, rest until the merchant's stock resupplied, and just repeat ad infinitum. This, by the way, is the Temple of Kinnereth, or Kine to the north, which is the major temple in Whiterun. And of course, just outside, we have a sacred object in the worship of Kinnereth, which is the Gilder Green. The Gilder Green. Up the stairs to the left we have Dragon's Reach, and there is the Gilder Green, and now it is sadly in its kind of dead, sickly state right now. If you were making this world into a survival world or a creative world, I would definitely add some, cherry blossoms or whatever. Whatever leaf type would have some red in it, and cover the Gilder Green, allow it to bloom again. Which I always did like doing in Skyrim. With that quest, you can either plant a smaller tree, which is the kind of right option, the more pious option, or you can steal some sap and use it to heal the Gilder Green. though I think planting a new one is the, appropriate outcome. I always just want the big, pretty tree in the center of Whiterun, so I take the sap. So we just explored Yorvaskr there, the home of the companions. We can also see archery targets are another painting option in this theme pack. We have the secret door which leads under the Skyforge there. I do wonder if you broke that down, if they have a little hollow space inside. We have the Skyforge here with its large bird overlooking the forge. Some lava burbling away. Is it Ireland Greymane that operates the forge, I believe? In Skyrim. Alright, having explored Yorvaskr and the Skyforge, I think we can go ahead and travel the rest of the way up these steps of Whiterun to explore Dragon's Reach. Dragon's Reach. Home of the Jarl. Jarl Balgruuf. Also we have a space for what should be the Shrine of Talos. Of course those Thalmor Jestgars would have something to say about that. I myself am. There's a great war in the Skyrim community about Stormcloaks versus Empire, because generally everybody agrees that the Thalmor suck, right? Everybody wants to kick the Thalmor out of Skyrim players. But what people disagree about is, should the Empire win the Skyrim Civil War, or should the Stormcloak faction win the Civil War? And also they've done a lovely job on Dragon's Reach here. Let's take a longer look at that, but first I want to go peek over here and see if they have the prison installed, as it were. No, it does not seem that they do. The path does lead over here to where the prison entrance would be, but they do not have any prison. But yeah, so let's go take outside and check out the Great Porch as well. This looks very nice. So, Skyrim players tend to disagree, should you side with the Empire or the Stormcloaks? Which side winning will better position Tamriel to defeat the Thalmor? And also there's arguments to be had beyond just whose victory will more likely lead to defeating the Thalmor. But you can also talk about just morally, right? Who should win? Does the Empire deserve to win after accepting a treaty with the Thalmor, for instance? Even if the Stormcloaks are less tactically effective choice, perhaps they are better simply because of their worship of Talos, their freedom of worship of Talos, There's all sorts of considerations like that in this discussion. I won't. I'm gonna lose half my subscribers for this. I should just keep my mouth shut, remain politically neutral. Pretend I am appealing to both sides. But no, my opinion is that the Empire winning the Civil War is a significantly better outcome for the future of Tamriel. The Thalmor being defeated is made much more likely by an Empire victory, by retaking Skyrim into the Imperial fold, than the Stormcloaks successfully seceding. Also, I like the clouds, how they're just at the perfect level here to kind of cover the floor in mist. But I also tend to have a pretty low opinion of Ulfric Stormcloak as a person. I think even if my final decision was that the Stormcloaks were better, I would say Ulfric Stormcloak is a pretty incompetent and flawed leader. Heavily flawed person. And I think him, well, we don't have to, I could do a whole video about, because there's a lot to talk about, right? Are the Stormcloaks justified in their revolution? Would it be tactically advantageous to defeating the Thalmor for them to win? Or would it help the Thalmor? Regardless of your answers to those questions, what kind of person is Ulfric? And is he a good leader? Is he a worthy leader? Does he Talos. It's pretty messed up that the Empire banned Talos worship, and of course, this gets into all the talk about the situation of the White Gold Concordat and why it had to be done, and so on and so on. But Talos is the man god, you know. He's the divine, representation of men. As a species, right, as a race. But maybe I should do a whole video about that, try to talk about the pros and cons and the considerations on all sides, and then, maybe give my own personal opinion at the end. But for now, I think this is a nice place to leave it as we look at the beautifully designed Dragon's Reach fortress here. And until next time, my friends, please take care of yourselves, and I